Welcome to the Glowshaw Business Chat series. In these interviews, Wes is chatting about all things business to serious professionals from a variety of industries. Listen in to hear more about their challenges, opportunities, and the lessons they've learnt along the way.
Morning, Katie.
Morning, Wes. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm all right. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Brilliant. Thank you for joining us on the latest Glowshaw Chat podcast. Really
You're
excited to have you on today and to get your knowledge around the lettings, landlords, property developers, etc. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into it. A bit of an introduction.
So I've done lettings now for, oh crikey, almost 13 years for all my sins. I sort of fell into it by mistake. I think like we all do a lot of those jobs. I did property maintenance for a council that was outsourced. So always sort of done maintenance for rental properties around about since I was about 18. And then a colleague that I worked with at the time, she used to be a lettings manager and stepped out from the council side of things and actually went back to being a lettings manager in the little picturesque village of Petersfield. And I thought, oh, that's a lot closer to home than Hazelmere from when I was living in Waterlooville. So I was like, okay, let's give this a go. And she kind of said to me, come on, I'll train you up and come and be my neg and everything. And I thought, well, yeah, I don't want to stay where I am. There's nowhere. I'd progressed as far as I could go. So I thought, okay, yeah, we'll give it a go. If not, then I'm closer to home anyway, and I'll see what happens. Yeah, that was the beginning of it. And then I kind of just moved on, and like everybody does that does lettings or estate agency, you just move from one to the other and you just keep going, to be honest. So, and then I bit the bullet 4 years ago now and set up my own letting agency, and the rest is history, as they say. Was in the blink of an eye, it was 4 years down the line.
Yeah, time does fly when you've got your own business. Absolutely.
Yes.
So the journey so far has been good for you?
Yeah, it's been bumpy, but then I think every new business is bumpy. It's fun, it's exciting, it's hard work. And I completely underestimated how hard it is. It isn't just a case of doing a job, shutting your laptop at 6 o'clock. It is swapping all those hats from being HR to marketing, to just being dog's body to making your own cup of tea and everything, to be honest with you. But yeah, I absolutely love it. I wouldn't want to go back now. It's the freedom, the fact that you can run things the way that you want them to be run. And I mean that because I've done corporate, so you have a lot of red tape with a corporate agent, and you've got to do a lot of tick boxes and make sure that everything's great, which is absolutely amazing because that's a really good way to be trained. And then I've worked for the smaller independent companies that probably wing it by the skin of their pants, in all honesty with you. And it is a little bit hairy when you go from a big corporate to the smaller independents. So I'm hoping that I'm probably somewhere in between. I don't need to tick all those boxes because I know that I've done my training, I know the legal side of it, and I know that everything is compliant for landlords, which is amazing. But I also don't need to wing it because I've got the experience and I've done it for the last 13 years. So hopefully my brain is all a little bit up to date and it keeps everyone on the right side of the law, which is all that landlords want, to be honest.
Well, yeah, the legal aspects, there's a lot to keep up to date with. And I suppose for a landlord, it's unless you're reading this or you have the information available, it's quite difficult to keep up to date with it all. And one day you might be legal, the next day it might be illegal, but
yeah,
without knowing it, so to speak. So
100%. Well, we have roughly 170 pieces of legislation as a letting agent, or if you're a landlord that does that independently, that's what you need to adhere to. So that's a lot to know. And it's a big wide world. You can end up with like banning orders, fines, prosecutions. I don't think landlords realise if they actually get this severely wrong, they go to prison. It isn't just a slap on the wrist or a fine. They can go to prison. So that's the scary side of it. So they do need to be compliant, and if they are a let-only landlord, then really they need to have a trade body or something they sign up to have those legal updates when they come through. It's the only way you can stay legal. So
yeah, no, absolutely. It brings me on to quite a nice point actually, in the fact that talking about the legal aspects, and in particular the changes with the electrical certificates, which I think, was it last year or the year before? And I'm sure you'll know the exact date, but this has a relevant point to landlords' insurance policies. In the fact that if there's an electrical fire, or a fire through an electrical fault, I should say, and there's not a valid electrical certificate, it could effectively void the policy. So not only would they potentially go to jail if someone gets severely injured or possibly passes away, insurance wouldn't pay out, financial difficulties. So there's a massive burden to make sure that these laws are adhered to. And bring me on quite nicely as well to the benefits of working with a letting agent. So that ultimately is one benefit of the 170 legislation laws that they need to comply with. What other benefits do you see landlords getting from working with a letting agent and yourself?
It's taking the stress factor off of landlords, to be honest with you, because if something's going to go wrong, so most of the majority of the time, if you've got a roof leak or God forbid a boiler goes, or you've got a leak somewhere in the house, you can say probably 8 times out of 10 that's going to happen out of hours. That doesn't happen between 9 and 5 when an office is open. That happens when all the plumbers are sat at home nicely tucked up and you can't get one for love nor money. So having that management agent, one, takes the stress off of that phone call, so you're not flapping as the landlord thinking, how am I going to get this sorted? Literally, as a managing agent, we take that call, we literally go, okay, that's fine, talk you through how to shut off the water if it is a leak. Obviously, if that's a roof leak, that isn't possible, but obviously talk them through stopcock and everything if we need to. And then it's the case of phone the plumber, and the plumbers are geared up with the managing agent that if the phone rings out of hours, you know it's a pure emergency, because we don't ring you outside of those hours otherwise. So they are geared up to know that either if it's something they can talk the tenant through on the phone that evening to stop the water, and they will go out first thing in the morning to save a call out charge to the landlord, they will. If they can't, then they will physically go and get in that van and they will go and do something that evening, even if that is a temporary repair, just to shut off the water or just something so that they can go and get parts for tomorrow and get that sorted. So we've eliminated the stress. So all we then do as a managing agent is phone the landlord, say, look, this is what's happened, but don't panic. It's sorted. The plumber's on its way, water shut off, whatever, it's sorted out tomorrow. So it's one of those things that at 2 a.m. in the morning, you're not flapping about, because not a lot of landlords work where it's not, landlords don't have a golden pot that they sit on like a lot of people think they do. They are a normal person that goes to work. So a 2 a.m. phone call is completely going to ruin their day and their following day at work, because they're not going to have had slept. They're going to have stressed and worried about it. That's where we come into play. So it's completely taking that stress out of the landlord. And with renters, especially with COVID that we've just all been through, as a letting agent, we have a process that we need to go through. So if a landlord has a rent and legal insurance policy, or if the rent becomes very overdue, and then we can serve a Section 8, which is for renters to get the tenants out. So it's a different notice to what we would as just an eviction notice. There are certain steps we need to do as a managing agent on instructing the tenant of, this is your rent arrears and this is what is next going to happen if you do not pay these. As a landlord, they genuinely don't know that. So as a rent and legal insurance policy, they are looking for those key dates that tenants have been advised that they are in rent arrears, and then what will happen for the next step if that doesn't if the rent isn't paid. So it's those things that we know that a landlord won't know, which then could potentially void their rent and legal insurance policy. So it's then pointless in having it, because obviously you've got the insurance policy to cover your rent for that time that the tenant doesn't pay, and also then so you're not having to pay the eviction process, which in total, depending on rent arrears, can be sort of £5,000 plus. So that insurance policy kicks in at that point. So I think it's just having that knowledge and that taking that stress factor off of a landlord completely. And it's working out, obviously, every day's different, which is why I love my job. No 2 days are the same. But you come across a lot of weird maintenance things that happen. It's knowing how to deal with them because you've had something that's similar. Whereas a landlord will only ever have their properties to deal with, properties, I suppose, that they deal with. So as a managing agent, you know roughly how you're going to be dealing with X, Y, and Z. So it's those quirky bits, Wes, but yeah, we're not horrible people, really. I know they all think that managing agents are horrible, but we're not. We are genuinely here to help you, not to take money off of you or try and rip you off.
It's very similar to how we work with our clients, and it's almost like a protective bubble where you keep them in a bubble, and you, like you said, exactly the same. You take the stress away. So if there is a claim, and you mentioned about like a burst pipe, or if there's a leak from the roof, that causes stress not only to the tenants but to the landlords, or it can do. So where you put the landlord in a bubble, so they don't need to worry about it, you get the temporary fix, you make sure that it's stopped, the tenants kind of looked after, and then from our point of view, we make sure that the claim gets paid out so that they get the work, they get the work done and get put back to how they were before, but without the landlord having to get involved too much. And like I said, it's that protective barrier. So if you had much dealings with claims at all, you mentioned about burst pipes, have you had to deal with insurers or?
Not recently, touch wood. I'll jinx myself now, aren't I? Not recently. I had one probably about 6-7 years ago, which we had to dig up flooring, which got very interesting. But again, I have to say the insurance company were really good. The landlord phoned, she lived abroad, which obviously didn't help, but she did phone her insurance company. And as a letting agent, that isn't something we can do on behalf of landlords to start with, which is, I think, what the frustration is for some landlords. They first need to raise that claim with the insurance company. But from then, they can then authorise the letting agent to speak to that insurance company. So then we can liaise. We can't then give final decisions and can't make decisions on the landlord's behalf, but we can help contractor-wise and access and everything like that. So we will take that stress part out of the claim for the landlord. But this particular claim was a mains pipe that was under a kitchen floor. So we had to lift the whole of the kitchen floor. As you can imagine, it was a pretty big job. But the insurance company were brilliant. The tenants were amazing. And it did all get sorted, but it took a while. But the landlord was very much involved, which does help as well. So from a landlord's point of view, there's certain things that a letting agent we cannot physically do for a landlord on their behalf. They do have to get involved. And she did, and it got sorted, and it was fairly straightforward for what it sounds like for a horrific job. Yeah. It took us obviously a month to get everything sorted and done and repaired and put back to how it was, because obviously insurance companies are not the quickest always at quote saying yes and everything, but they were amazing, and loss adjusters went out and contractors. And yeah, my experience has been has been a positive one with insurance companies. They might gripe a little bit to start with when you go, oh, I've got a letting agent, and they kind of think that we're going to put that resistance up, but we don't, to be honest with you. Sorry.
It's okay, don't worry, it's all good.
But yeah, no, honestly, no, insurance companies on the whole are genuinely okay with dealing with letting agents. And so I think if we work with them rather than ignoring them, I think that's where it really does work. But yeah, no, I haven't, in 13 years, I haven't come across an insurance company that I've struggled to help. But then it's not something we deal with day in, day out, to be honest. It's only like those big jobs that happen, and touch wood.
Been lucky.
Yeah, touch wood. They don't happen all that often. Sometimes a landlord will go, I had one probably about 18 months ago, so just before COVID, we had a roof leak. Again, the middle of the night. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. Tenant phoned me, obviously. Water was coming through the apex of the roof, and he didn't know what to do. High voltage ceiling. He couldn't obviously get up there and do anything. It was one of those things. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. There's not a lot we can do. It's dark and it's wet and it's windy. So first thing in the morning, the roofer went up there. We got it all sorted. The landlord was absolutely amazing. Authorised the repair, even though it wasn't obviously a cheap fix to do. And then what they did is they retrospectively went back to their insurance company and said, this is what's happened. Can we make the claim? Obviously the flip side of having everything done, because we needed to get it sorted for the tenants. So again, I spoke to insurance company, provided them with details, provided them with the contractor's details, invoices, phone calls, etc. that had happened. And I left it with them to sort out with the landlords. And I think they did get some money back for that. But yeah, that was really straightforward. They only needed some certain information and paperwork from me that the landlords didn't hold, and it all went through swimmingly.
Yeah, a lot of insurers prefer proactive landlords or letting agents that try and mitigate costs rather than leave it, because obviously the more it's left, then the more damage appears, and then the tenants might have to move out, so then there's loss of rent. So yeah, the quick proactive repairs and works will definitely go down well with insurers, and obviously it saves them money. So no, it's a good shout. So within your 13 years so far, landlords that come to you, what do you see as like the biggest bloopers that landlords make, either with a letting agent before joining like yourselves, or another letting straight managing agent?
The biggest one that I see is probably that the landlords think they can insure their property as though they live in it.
Really?
Rather than, so they've insured it as a homeowner that is living in it, rather than it being a rental property.
Wow.
I've had that a couple of times.
Okay.
And obviously it's not valid.
No, absolutely.
As soon as they will say, oh, I've got a tenant in there, or they're not interested.
No.
That is their get out of jail free card, and they will not help you. And I've had one where they've completely cancelled the policy.
Yeah, they will do. It's all to do with like being consumer and commercial clients, customers, but and they're completely different policies. That's interesting. Do you know, I never actually knew that was one of the main.
Did you not? No, that is that is one of the main ones, especially if it's a bit of an accidental landlord. So a landlord that has lived in the property and for some reason has moved away to go to work, or it's like your family's property, but you know it's insured, but it's insured for a homeowner to live in, not to be rented out. So yeah, that is the one I see quite often. So that is definitely, when I speak to landlords, that is always on my hit list to go, please make sure that you change that, because and I run through the list of what I've done with other landlords, but it's invalid. So if the property was to burn down, you've got no insurance, which is a very scary prospect.
Absolutely, or any claim, to be honest. If there's any claim on the policy, you will not be covered.
No.
You just give me a great idea for a blog or because you just naturally assume that landlords know that it needs to be under a landlord's policy, not under a home insurance policy. And they might not understand the ramifications, but we just hit the nail on the head. Worst case scenarios, you're not actually covered. So if anything happens, you will not get paid out, and you will financially lose out. You'll have to pay for that yourself to get any repairs done. Oh, okay. Thank you. That's a good one. Any other little nuggets?
A big one at the moment, and only due to COVID, is a lot of landlords have taken out what is classed as a rent and legal insurance policy. So where the rent is covered if tenants don't pay it. But a lot of landlords took them out over the last year, for example. And one of those criteria is that your tenants have to be referenced and they have to fit a criteria. Well, obviously landlords wanted this insurance policy because they were worried tenants were losing jobs, etc. And the insurance company don't ask for confirmation that your tenants have been registered at this point. They just say to you, okay, that's fine. You're ticking that box to say yes. And there's been many occasions where a landlord has gone to claim on a policy. They've then asked for the retrospective paperwork so that they can put that claim through, so the references and everything. Landlords don't have them because it hasn't actually been done.
Okay, so we don't sell rent guarantee cover, mainly because we've looked into it in the past, and there was lots of clauses and kind of get out jail cards that you mentioned. So I'm more intrigued. So was it that the landlords just didn't get references, or they said they had them and hadn't had them, or they got references but they didn't match the criteria that the insurer needed?
It's a little bit of everything, in all honesty with you, Ez. So some have been where I had one where a landlord used an agent, first of all, to do the references, and has then moved away from the agent and didn't get all the paperwork for the tenancy. So they didn't ever have the references from previous to the tenants moving in. But also when you tick that box, you are saying that they have passed a satisfactory referencing criteria. And I don't think landlords are reading what that satisfactory referencing criteria is. They're just saying yes. And a rent and legal insurance can be anywhere from sort of like £20 a month to £50 a month. So somewhere for that insurance policy to then find out later on down the line, when your tenants are already in arrears, that you actually then don't qualify for this insurance, is definitely a kick in the teeth. Yeah. So it's reading the fine print to know actually what you're saying yes to. Whereas, like, obviously, if I do a rent and legal insurance policy, tenants are referenced. I use the referencing company to do the rent and legal insurance so that the two marry up. So there is no way that they can ever say the tenants haven't gone through the referencing criteria, because it's their referencing criteria, so they know that they qualify for it. So we're taking out that elimination for them to ever say no to the claim.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Okay, so you know the criteria of the rent guarantee effectively that you're offering, and therefore you make sure that criteria is met. So if there is a claim, there'd have to be something outside of that criteria, like a material fact or something that the landlord's not disclosed to you that would then cause an issue. Interesting. Okay, thank you. Like I said, because we don't offer it. We just don't have that facility. So you're definitely the person to go to for landlords that are looking for rent guarantee cover and for an agent to take the stress away. Awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
We like a stress-free life.
Yeah, I think everyone does. You just don't get it, especially when you're a business. No. There's no such thing. How do you view the property market at the moment, Katie?
In one word, tough.
Okay.
Everybody's being put to the post, and that goes for sales and rentals. So there is like first-time buyers are struggling because house prices are just phenomenal. So they're, bless them, struggling to find their deposit. And when they get there, the house price is already risen, so they still need more to save. And landlords that are wanting to at this moment in time are remortgaging because interest rates are low on mortgages. So they're taking some money out of what their current portfolio is to expand their portfolio. So then they're getting put to the post by landlords for those smaller properties because they rent well. And then for the rental side, there's just so many people for one property that want to go on. I mean, I put a property live yesterday, which was a 3-bedroom house down Farlington. Within 24 hours, I had 35 inquiries.
Wow. So it's hot then. The actual rental market's hot. So is there the case that there's not enough properties out there for the...
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. There's not enough stock for the people that are looking, but that's obviously driving prices up. So on both sides, so rents have increased by about 6% in the last year.
Right. Okay.
So which is incredible, and like the house prices have risen. So at some point, this incline is going to have to either plateau or drop a bit. So there's going to be some people out there that unfortunately have bought a house at the top end that it won't possibly be when they come to sell it. So they will end up making a loss on the property, which is such a shame, just so that they can get their foot on the ladder.
Yeah, I suppose it'd be like a correction, but then I suppose it also depends how long they'll live in the property. Because they're going to live in there for like, say, 10, 15 years. You can see from previous that correction, it does correct itself and then starts increasing again. So, yeah. So what type of, what are the best kind of type of properties then that you see? Is this across the board that you're seeing like the increases, or is there a specific type of property?
They've genuinely increased across the board.
Okay.
But the properties that were hotcakes before still are. So they're still the 2, the 3, the 4-bedroom houses. So those family homes. There is still a market for the smaller properties. There always will be. But you have a bigger turnaround because obviously people then tend to have families. So they stay in the smaller properties for a couple of years and then they'll go up. But generally, once a person is in sort of a 3 or 4-bedroom house that they rent, they normally stay longer because they normally grow to meet the needs of the house. So they don't come up that often. So when they do, it is like a race because everybody wants that property. So it is still the 2, the 3, the 4-bedroom. And I'd probably say houses rather than flats. Especially now after Corona, everybody wants a bit of an outside space. Everyone's realised that they want a garden, they want to be able to go out and explore and maybe have an extra room to work at home now. I'm seeing that a lot. So what they originally had as a 3-bedroom, they're now expanding to a 4-bedroom because that mum and dad are now working part-time from home, so they need to have an office space. So it's definitely the more family homes, but that has always been the case anyway, even pre-COVID.
Okay, and do you see like location being important with those family homes, or is it just anywhere that has like a 2, 3, 4-bed house with a garden?
To be honest, that's changed from Corona as well. Whereas a lot of people used to go, oh, I need to be close to a motorway junction. So because I work in London or I've got to get to here, that has changed. Still, kids schooling matters. So if they've got a child that goes to school, that is still a crucial point. But so much for adults being closer to work, we're seeing a lot more of them are going, it doesn't matter now because we're not doing the commute so often. So that element has changed, but no, still schools are quite hot to be close to, because a lot of, especially secondary schools, because once they start to get, they tend to walk, so parents don't want them walking for miles or anything. So yeah, that's still a hot topic for schools.
Okay, that's great, thank you. I appreciate we're taking up quite a lot of time, and it's been really insightful, and thank you for sharing. Where do you see the property market going over the next 5 years with your crystal ball time?
Oh crikey, Wes, that's $1 million question.
It is.
In all honesty, I'd love to say that the house prices are going to drop, so that more people can get on the housing market. But patterns tend not to show that, unfortunately. What I think will probably happen, and I could very much be proved wrong, but this is just my personal view from what has happened in the past, is that we will see house prices probably sort of just plateau out a little bit, and then they may drop, but not by a lot, just by a little bit, and then they'll start to increase again, because that's just what the economy has always done. A lot of people seem to think we're going to end up with a crash, but I don't personally think we are. There's still a lot of people out there buying. Mortgage rates are still good.
Yeah.
People still want to move. People are still renting. So I would be very shocked if we did see a crash. I think we will just see a level playing field, and then possibly a little dip before it starts to increase again.
Sure. I suppose it comes down to supply and demand, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, awesome. Do you have any kind of final words of wisdom, any other little nuggets for the landlords listening out there?
If you're not using a managing agent, use one. The knowledge, I promise you, is absolutely invaluable. We spend years training. We still do training now, every day, up to date. And who wants a stress-free life? Let's be honest, everybody wants to be stress-free. So let a managing agent take that off your hands and enjoy your life, and don't worry about those 2 a.m. phone calls. Let us do that.
Especially the ones from tenants saying that the roof's coming, or there's a leak, or it's woken up.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Let us worry about that, and you get to be cozy in bed, and we'll let you know what's happened the next day.
Sounds good. Oh, brilliant. Katie, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really insightful. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you have too.
I have. It's been amazing.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You are very welcome. There's no problems.
Thank you for listening to the Glowshaw Business Chat series. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, or if you'd like to discuss how we can help your business mitigate the risks you face, please email Wes on wesleyhaines@glowshaw.co.uk.